Talked a lot about intangibles yesterday, and I'm just curious, when you're looking at different players, how do you know what intangibles to look for that will fit with a roster that you have that you don't really necessarily know right away? Does that make sense?
I think when you go there to the intangible realm, you're talking about two separate things, both on field and off field. And I think all of us can, when we think about the idea of intangibles, we probably get to the same spot without even saying anything out loud. But on field, we're looking for competitiveness, toughness, and football instincts. Off the field, you're looking for people that elevate those around them and, are passionate about the sport of football. So it's really not all that complex, but it's something that we're just simply going to prioritize and be disciplined in our approach in doing so.
You talked about guys being true to themselves, true to themselves individually and stuff. Can you expand on what you're really kind of referring to in that and how it kind of all fits together when you're putting stuff?
Yeah, I think, I'll mention Les Snead again real quick because Les is unapologetically himself and he awards everybody that he comes in contact with that same luxury. And I've felt that. And there's nothing better on planet Earth than just simply being yourself. And so the people that we'll bring into this environment, this ecosystem, we know that they're going to be made of the right stuff so that by being nothing more than who they are, they're going to elevate our space.
How important was it for the organization to have a guy like Ethan Wall just to keep the train on tracks? And do you envision him, staying on throughout the draft, et cetera, moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's been critical. Ethan and I have worked closely over the last few days and really enjoyed that and looking forward to working with him through the rest of this spring. And for the rest of the scouting staff, I can't wait to get to know him.
I know you said yesterday when I asked you about the structure, would you make any additions before May? Describe the structure in Los Angeles, having those senior personnel executives. Is that maybe something in the future you'd want to emulate in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think it's an appropriate way of operating and would certainly be one that I'd look to deploy.
And Brian Zanders, what is your relationship with him?
Brian is a major support system for me. I think, with his experience, not only as a former GM, but also across the entirety of the football operation, dating us back to a time as a coach. I think he's somebody whose insight and wisdom I'll certainly continue to leverage as much as possible and he'd allow, but have over the course of my career to the fullest extent.
Do you like where you guys are with the salary cap?
Yeah, I do. I think we got some flexibility here, and we'll remain disciplined throughout pro free agency and address some specific needs. But I think you guys can all expect that with the amount of draft capital that we have, not only in this draft but the next, that's where we're going to be building.
Trevor is certainly close with Christian Kirk, off the field and on. Does that factor into a decision when you're making a kind of a tough call on whether to keep a veteran?
Absolutely. I think that's key and critical. The quarterback's, the one that we're going to center around, and so his comfortability is going to be something that we weigh heavily.
There's obviously alignment between you and Liam. How important and what's the process to getting everybody, meaning scouts, coaches, sort of knowing the language and knowing what the coaches want?
That's a great question. I think it's actually rooted in the idea of just getting into a room and begin talking.
Okay.
And the one thing that is a common language is the film. So we'll turn that on and we'll just begin working through. And that's what we've already started.
I've heard a couple of people say about you and Liam, emotional IQ. You guys have that. Do you sense that from Liam? And is that uncommon in this industry, this world, to be so relative and understand players and other people in the building?
Yeah, I don't know that it would be an uncommon characteristic, but I do know that it's one that Liam certainly embodies, and it makes it so that I feel like I can be my best version around him, and I know that's something that everybody else feels when they interact.
I know you referenced it on the podium, the interior of the offensive line. If you could elaborate a little bit more what setting the dish means and evaluate the Jaguars' current offensive line as it stands.
Yeah, I think through that lens, when a quarterback has the luxury of stepping into a throw and not feeling that internal pressure, you're going to feel a lot of success come off of that. And so that's what I mean by setting the dish in the interior, and really look forward to working with our staff to better understand their insights on what our current interior offensive line looks like and the options that we'll have available throughout pro free agency and the draft.
You seem to slow things down in general, but how fast are things moving right now for the next 2 months, really? I know you're not behind. You said you're not behind, but there's a lot going into the next couple of months, right?
No
Here,
doubt.
free agency, draft.
No doubt. I think it's important to just root yourself in the moment. Obviously, you're aware of what's coming down the line, but as long as you stay there, you don't feel the weight as much, and you enjoy the process a lot more.
You guys are obviously sitting at 5 could easily get calls with teams wanting to move into that spot. How do you evaluate compensation? I know there's obviously the Jimmy Johnson chart that's evolved, but how do you kind of look at that, James, in terms of making a decision on this is what we need to do to make this acquisition or this, trading back?
There's a lot of variables that go into that, and there are a ton of different charts that we'll utilize in order to find the best options for us if they present themselves. But I think an increased volume of draft capital is what we'll be hunting up. Obviously, we already have that currently, and more at-bats is not going to be a bad thing.
Having 10 picks in this year's draft, just how aggressive can that let you guys be in the offseason? Not even just for the draft necessarily, even potentially making some kind of moves via trades.
Yeah, I think it allows us the flexibility, and that's the exciting part, right? So I think there's a lot of options on the table, and I look forward to working with our coaching staff, scouting staff, and support staff to bring it all to life.
What were you going to teach?
I'm sorry?
What were you going to teach?
Oh, man. So I actually walked into the profession thinking that I was going to change the landscape of physical education. My first job, you guys want to know what it is?
Absolutely.
A librarian. All right, so the exact opposite. Okay, now the actual title was Media and Literacy Coordinator. I was developing a curriculum for media in the 21st century while at the same time teaching leadership to freshmen and seniors. And then after that was only for a single year. I pivoted to join my father at a different school, and I became a school administrator and a high school football coach. So, yeah, that's kind of background.
Arm length has been go ahead, D-Rock, you go.
Did you like the teaching aspect of it? Was it a hard decision to kind of leave that profession?
It was, because from a young age, obviously, so I said my grandfather and my father, they were both in that line of work. And so it was an easy career path that I thought I could find success from, knowing that I could essentially emulate what they had done and expand on that. So stepping away when I did it, it was certainly not an easy decision, but one that I said, you know what, learning from less, supporting less is not going to be an opportunity that ever presents itself. If it doesn't work, I can revert back. I think there were initial emotions that came with that and a lack of fulfillment in the idea that, I wanted to help people grow. And when I got into scouting, initially, you're identifying strengths and weaknesses, but you're not a part of the growth. And so the way that I filled that void over time was by pairing skill sets together, and engineering team dynamics is really where I help, or at least for my own fulfillment and what fills my cup is seeing that come to life on the field and people balance each other out with strengths and weaknesses.
Arm length has been a buzzword in Jacksonville for some time. What does arm length mean to you, especially here at the NFL Combine? Measurables like that, I should say. I should go broader to those measurables.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and take a peek at our last handful of drafts, and you can answer that question for yourself.
St. Louis. When I say St. Louis, what does that mean to you?
It means family, it means friends, and that's a major support system for sure that I'll always rely on.
How important is that defensive front, setting the dish, but the converse of that, and having guys in the interior defensive front? How important is that to create that disruption? You're talking about setting the dish for Trevor, but how important is that to affect the opposing quarterback?
Yeah, disruption, chaos, it's going to make it tough on opponents and offensive operation, and so we'll really be leaning into that in some of the player acquisitions that you see here on the horizon.
Did you turn the tape on of this team last year and see some things that jump out that are like, hey, we can fix some of this quick?
Yeah, there's some schematic adjustments that I think will surface some players in a different light, and that what we saw most recently won't look the same.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars. For even more coverage of the Big Cats, be sure to subscribe to 1010XL Jaguars.